today I'm gonna show you my husband's office. It's a great before and after. So here's the before. And now here's the after. Oh, that's cheating though. Any room other than a messy playroom is a gorgeous room. That's not what I'm here to teach you. This room tells the story of my husband, talks about his interests and his sports, and I created it all to showcase his personality. So when you came into this room, you would get to know him better. And I believe that beautiful, well-designed rooms tell a story. They evoke emotion and pique your curiosity. Now, if I can do it, you can do it. I'm not a professional interior designer. I'm just a homeowner that loves interior design, and I want to share with you how I created this room. So first, I'm gonna tell you the story of my husband and how we met. Second, I'm gonna teach you how to find inspiration to get started so your room will communicate the right story. Number 3, I'm gonna teach you how to define a color palette and make it cohesive and teach you to stick to it no matter what, except for a pop of color. Fourth, I'm gonna talk about this blue and how to use these dark hue, moody colors. And it is a very technical look, and I'm gonna teach you how to do it. Don't worry, you got this. Next, I'm gonna show you how objects in the room communicate. Your chairs are talking, your tables are talking. They're all telling a story before you even enter that room. So you wanna make sure they're all telling your story of what the point of the room is. So let's get started. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about my husband. We met when I was 14 and he was 17. We met snowboarding, and at the time, there was only 3 of us girls riding on the mountain. We would meet up and ride, and he had dreadlocks. He ran the radio station at his college, and he was just a very unique character. He always has been and always will be. And I was so mainstream. I just wore the same uniform, the black pants, a tight shirt, would like go out on the weekends and be like, We were the odd couple forever. And we were best friends, and we would go snowboarding and surfing and play golf, and we were so active together. Our friendship just grew into a relationship. Now, my husband is an attorney. His father is an attorney, his brother's an attorney, and it is the last thing that he identifies with. In his mind, he still thinks of himself as an 18-year-old. Still wants to get on his skateboard. He still wants to snowboard and surf. And I knew that was the person that I wanted to design the room for. And that is such a great design lesson. Design a room of who you are inside. Design the room for yourself and what you love and all of your passions. Let it tell your story. Now that we got the character, we know the story that we're going to tell, then we find the inspiration. Now, how did I find my inspiration? I knew there was another person out there just like my husband who loves his skateboarding, surfing, and biking. Sid Mcgee. And so I showed my husband his office and his skateboard ramp. And immediately my husband needed a half pipe in our basement. Skateboard ramp was installed. We were ready to get down to business on the actual office. Now, what I loved about Sid Mcgee's office was a moody, dark color. I knew the easiest way to do that was with paint. But I also knew that I needed an inspiration piece to jump off with. This piece of artwork that was painted by my mother and our artist friend, Kale Reeves, they painted this together, and my husband always admired this painting. And this is what was my inspiration to build the entire color palette off of. Which also leads me to my next point, how to create a cohesive color palette. Now, all the objects in this room relate back to the piece. You see the blue, you see the grays, you see the whites, you see the purples and the mauves. All these things are linking back to this picture. Now, interior designers and the professionals, you will notice that they'll take a scarf or a bead or a small picture, and they will use that as an inspiration piece. But for homeowners like myself, grabbing a large impactful piece and then designing it around by pulling the colors out is a little bit easier than just random obscure objects bringing everything together. But you'll notice in this office and in my own office that I'll show you shortly that I did this 2 times. I grabbed a large piece of artwork and I let it define the cohesive color palette. Now that we have a cohesive color palette, I want to show you how the objects in the room link back, but also tell a story. So starting with this first snowboard that we hung on the wall. That was my husband's favorite board. And when he showed it to me, I was like, yes, it's got blue in it. It's got white. It's going to pop off the room and be absolutely perfect. Now take a look at this sticker that my husband had for 25 years. This sticker meant so much to him that I brought it to a local framer. I made it look beautiful and intentional. But notice that the colors in the sticker are also the colors in the painting. Now, we did design the entire bookcase for his record collection and his record player, and that does become a cool design feature that talks about his love of music while also being a beautiful visual element in the room. He also has this surfboard that he goes out and surfs and then brings back in his office, and even though it's dirty, it's blends right in. It kind of adds to the overall vibe so it stays. But what I want to show you is that the objects that are sentimental are going back to the cohesive color palette. Now, I cannot talk about a cohesive color palette without talking about a pop of color. Pop of color breaks all the rules. And so what I did was I brought in these orange pillows. Now there's still orange in the painting, but it's just like that pop that creates interest. So if the room is falling flat, bring in a pop of color, one that you find in your inspiration piece that does go with it, but just is this little shot of interest. The last thing I really need you to pay attention to, and this is one that people miss the most, is that you have to look at the size of the object in relation to where they're placed. That's called scale. Is it the right scale? Meaning, does the object look good in the space? Notice that the snowboards are hung. They elongate the wall, but they fit very proportionately in between the window and the wall. Notice that the sticker is smaller and the TV balances out. Objects that I'm bringing in fill the space perfectly. The records are lined up. The shelves were made to fit it perfectly. Notice how large the picture is to really bring that impact and how I made it perfectly fit within the shelves. Now that is the last thing. A lot of people say, just get a lot of stuff you like and put it around the room. That'll just look like a hodgepodge mess. Making sure that the objects are the right size for the space is a key element when you're designing a room that has a cohesive, high design, very intentional, and that tells a really good story. Once you start to think and change your mind and think about the size of things, you will get it, I promise you. Now let's talk about this moody blue. This is Farrow & Ball Hag Blue. Hag Blue, Hague blue. Now, when you bring in such a dark color, it's a huge commitment, and you really have to know and have the guts to go for it. I want you to be brave and courageous in your color choices. Listen to that inner voice and trust it. And when you're bringing in a color of this magnitude, I opted to paint the ceiling to really give that moody feeling. But what I really want you to notice, I gave your eye a rest by bringing in a light floor. Think about when you're eating such a good meal, halfway through you want to sigh, unbutton your pants, lay back and be like, whew, and you're enjoying it, but you need a break. The same goes when you bring in a lot of pattern or a lot of color. You need that break. You need that moment to let your eye rest so then you can go back to enjoying it. And that's what this white rug does. You also might want to bring in a lot of accessories that are light and bright that really pop. But really, the whole technicality of these dark, moody rooms is giving your eye a break by bringing the light back in. And the last thing I want to point out in this color of this room is that it's a real matte feeling. I did the ceiling, the walls, the trim in a real low sheen eggshell So they would match the cabinets. I really wanted everything to be very cohesive and give off this cool vibe. Like, I'm gonna go a little flatter, I'm not gonna be so shiny. Let's talk about the objects in the room and what they're communicating and how they add to the story. Now let's start with these chairs. Now I knew I wanted them low profile so you could see out the window. I knew I wanted them to be very masculine. Like, you're gonna lay back, get comfortable, and listen to some records. Now notice they're clean lines, they're not round, they're chunky, and they really don't have any like skirts or anything tufted. They're really giving off like I'm cool vibes. Now the desk doesn't have drawers. It's very airy, it's not heavy, because I wanted to give off the feeling that when you're in the room, you are not being weighted down by a lot of papers, by a lot of responsibility. When my husband's doing work here, I want him to feel like it's sort of a vacation from his real office where there are that big, chunky, heavy furniture and tons of files. Now let's talk about the things in the room that tell a story of what my husband does. The light fixture reminds me about a cluster of desk lamps. Moving on to the other light source above the painting. I didn't choose a modern fixture because my husband's profession is rooted in history. It kind of just went along with giving it an old world feel. And lastly, his office chair. I knew I wanted to bring in that rich leather that you see in attorney's office. It goes really well with the blue. I really needed a chair that was like, no, I do really hard work. I have a really stressful job. And I work a lot. And so I really wanted just a hint of that in here. Because despite my husband's best efforts to never identify as an attorney, he is one for a lot of hours in the day. So that's what this chair communicates and tells his story. So there are my 5 tips on how to create a room that tells a story. Make sure that you find your story, get a main character. Then find your inspiration that you can jump off. And don't forget, you got to create a cohesive color palette. Watch that scale. Make sure the objects are relating back to that inspiration piece while fitting perfectly in their spaces. Use color to evoke emotion, to create that moody, sultry feeling. And don't be afraid of it. Trust your gut and go for it. You will not regret it. And lastly, don't forget that objects like chairs and tables, they're doing the talking for you. So make sure that they're telling the story that you want to. I really hope that you get out there and you create this room. Be brave, be bold. Know that you have it inside you. If you got to this end of this video, you are a design enthusiast just like me. And you have it in you to design a room even more beautiful than this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.